The bright lights of the studio set reflected off the polished floor as Carrie Underwood stepped onto the stage. Dressed in a simple yet elegant dress, her signature cross necklace rested delicately on her collarbone. She smiled warmly as the audience applauded, but there was a hint of tension in the air. Across from her sat TV host Mark Reynolds, a man known for his smug, confrontational style. He had built his career on pushing boundaries and provoking guests. And tonight, it was clear Carrie was his next target. She took her seat gracefully, unfazed by the energy in the room. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Carrie Underwood, great to have you on the show, Mark said, his voice overly polite. Thank you, Mark. Happy to be here, she replied, her tone smooth but firm. At first, the conversation was light. Her new album, her recent tour, even a few laughs. But then, the shift happened. Mark leaned forward, his expression shifting to something more pointed. You know, Carrie, I've noticed something. She met his gaze without hesitation. Noticed what? Mark smirked, gesturing toward her necklace. That, the cross. You wear it everywhere. Don't you think that's a little much? I mean, in today's world, isn't it a bit outdated? A hush fell over the audience. The energy in the room changed. Some gasped, others exchanged glances. The tension was thick, as if everyone knew something big was about to happen. Carrie blinked once, then slowly smiled, completely unshaken. Mark smirked, sensing an opportunity to corner Carrie. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I mean, Carrie, let's be honest. You're a superstar, a global icon. But don't you think wearing that cross, talking about your faith so openly, could alienate some of your fans? Isn't it, I don't know, a bit divisive? A few nervous chuckles rippled through the audience. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Carrie, however, remained perfectly composed. She tilted her head slightly, her fingers gently brushing the cross at her neck. Divisive? I don't see it that way at all. Mark raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? Carrie smiled. Not an arrogant smile. Not defensive, but one of quiet confidence. I don't wear this to make a statement. I wear it because it's a part of who I am. Just like how some people wear lucky charms or sentimental jewelry. This isn't about anyone else. It's about my personal faith. Mark scoffed, shaking his head. But don't you think celebrities should stay neutral? You have millions of followers. Wouldn't it be better to, I don't know, leave religion out of the spotlight? Carrie's smile didn't fade. I didn't know faith was something we were supposed to hide, Mark. If I were wearing a necklace with my initials, would we be having this conversation? The audience murmured. Mark shifted in his seat, caught off guard by her poised response. Carrie continued, her voice steady. See, the thing is, I'm not forcing anyone to believe what I do. I'm just being myself. And if being authentic makes some people uncomfortable, well, that's something they need to reflect on. Not me. Silence. The weight of her words settled over the room. Mark opened his mouth to reply, but no words came out. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The audience, sensing a shift, began to applaud. Slowly at first, then louder. Carrie simply folded her hands in her lap and waited. The applause still echoed through the studio when Mark leaned forward, a smug glint in his eyes. He wasn't finished yet. All right, Carrie, let's take this a step further. He gestured toward her necklace again. You say it's about authenticity. Fine. But don't you think wearing a symbol of faith, especially in today's world, can be exclusionary? I mean, your fans come from all walks of life. Wouldn't it be better to keep personal beliefs, well, personal? Carrie let out a soft, knowing chuckle, shaking her head slightly. Mark, do you hear what you're saying? Mark blinked. What do you mean? Carrie leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. You're asking me to be inclusive by erasing part of who I am. That's not inclusion, that's conformity. The crowd murmured again, the energy in the room shifting. Some nodded in agreement while others sat frozen, captivated by the exchange. Mark let out a forced chuckle, but his fingers tightened around his cue cards. Oh, come on, Carrie. You're an intelligent woman. You know what I'm getting at. Carrie tilted her head, waiting. Mark sighed. Look, I respect faith. Truly. But don't you think there's a time and place for it? Carrie didn't hesitate. Mark, when is the right time and place to be yourself? Should I only wear this necklace in private? Should I only pray when no one's watching? Is that what you're suggesting? The room went silent again. Mark's confidence wavered for the first time. He cleared his throat, scrambling for a counterpoint. Carrie pressed on. Because if you're saying that faith should only exist in the shadows, then you're not really asking for neutrality. You're asking for silence. And I won't apologize for refusing to hide who I am. A soft but distinct amen came from somewhere in the audience. And then applause, this time louder, longer. Even Mark seemed taken aback. His smirk had faded, replaced by something else, something that looked suspiciously like respect. Carrie simply sat back, her cross resting against, her collarbone shining under the bright studio lights. Mark took a deep breath, shifting in his seat. His confidence, once unshakable, now wavered under the weight of Carrie's unwavering stance. The audience wasn't just entertained anymore, they were engaged, invested. All right, Carrie, Mark finally said, tapping his pen against his cue cards. I see you're passionate about this, but let's be honest. Aren't you afraid this kind of public display could cost you opportunities? Alienate people who don't share your views? Carrie gave a small smile, nodding slightly as if she had been expecting this. Mark, let me ask you this, she said, her tone even, her eyes locked onto his. Have you ever been told to hide what you believe in? Mark hesitated, clearly caught off guard. I well know, not exactly. Carrie nodded again. That's my point. When someone tells me that standing by my faith might cost me opportunities, what they're really saying is that I need to fit into a mold that someone else made for me. But the truth is, I don't work for their approval. I answer to something greater. A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience, a mixture of admiration and deep thought. Mark, however, wasn't ready to back down. But Carrie, isn't there a difference between personal faith and using a platform to push an agenda? Carrie's eyebrows lifted, and for the first time, her voice carried a sharper edge. So let me get this straight. You think me wearing a cross is pushing an agenda, but every celebrity who preaches their own worldview isn't? Why is it that when someone speaks about faith, it's controversial, but when someone tears it down, it's just an opinion? Mark's mouth opened slightly, but he had no immediate answer. The audience erupted into applause. Some people even stood up, clapping louder than before. Carrie wasn't finished. She leaned in slightly. You know, Mark, my faith doesn't make me weak. It's not a limitation. It's my foundation, and I won't trade that for anyone's approval, not yours, not Hollywood's, not anyone's. Mark exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. For the first time all night, he wasn't just reacting, he was reflecting. And the audience? They were witnessing something bigger than just an interview. The room fell into an unusual stillness. Even Mark, the sharp-witted host known for pressing his guests to their limits, had nothing to say for a moment. He shifted slightly in his chair, glancing at the audience, perhaps realizing he had lost control of the conversation. Carrie let the silence stretch for just long enough before she spoke again. Her voice steady, but filled with conviction. "You asked me earlier if I was afraid that standing by my faith would cost me opportunities. But let me tell you something, Mark." She turned her gaze directly to the camera. "If staying true to my values means losing opportunities that were never meant for me in the first place, then so be it." The audience exploded into applause. Not just polite claps, but loud, thunderous approval. A few people even stood up, cheering. Mark looked momentarily caught between frustration and admiration. He finally let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "Well, Carrie, I have to say, I wasn't expecting this kind of response." Carrie gave a small, knowing smile. "Mark, the reason you weren't expecting it is the same reason why I won't stay silent. People are tired of being told they have to apologize for what they believe. And I won't." The applause grew even louder. Mark leaned back in his chair, exhaling. He glanced at the producer off camera, then back at Carrie. He knew he had lost. There was no witty comeback, no clever retort that could undo what had just happened. "Well," he said with a smirk, "I guess I'll just have to let the audience decide who won this one." Carrie chuckled, reaching for the small cross around her neck and holding it between her fingers. "I don't need to win, Mark. I just need to stand firm." As the show cut to commercial, the last image on the screen was Carrie sitting tall, confident, her faith unshaken. Sometimes, the strongest battles aren't won with anger, but with unshakable conviction. If this story inspired you, take a moment to reflect. Would you have the courage to stand for what you believe in? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that challenge, inspire, and uplift. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss